My name is Grace Miller. I'm 32, and tomorrow my little sister is getting married in San Francisco. To her, it's the grandest day of her life. To me, it feels like walking into a stage set up to remind everyone that I'm still single, still the family disappointment. Before I take you there, let me ask, have you ever been humiliated by the people who were supposed to love you? If you've ever been made to feel like less just because you don't fit their version of perfect, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this story. Because what happened to me proves that karma doesn't always whisper. Sometimes it roars. Seattle was drizzling that Friday morning, the kind of steady rain that painted the streets silver. I stood by my apartment window in Capitol Hill, suitcase open on the bed. A navy dress hung on the closet door. I'd chosen it carefully elegant, but not loud, something that said, I belong here even if my sister thought otherwise. My phone buzzed. Mom's name lit up. Grace, don't be late for the photos. Chloe wants everyone ready by 3, Mom said. Her voice carried that mix of excitement and tension only a mother of the bride can have. I land at 12:40, I told her, scrolling through my flight details. If traffic isn't terrible, I'll get to the Fairmont before 2. A pause. I could hear dishes clinking in her Portland kitchen. Just try not to take Chloe's jokes too seriously, okay? She's stressed. Sure, Mom, I said. But we both knew they weren't jokes. Minutes after hanging up, my phone lit again, this time Chloe. Hey, sis, remember, no chatting up the bartender like at Joanne's wedding? She laughed, her tone syrupy sweet. Oh, and you don't have a +1, right? No, I said flatly. Thought so. She chuckled, like she'd won something. Make sure you wear something cheerful. Today is about love, after all. When she hung up, I dropped the phone on my desk. My reflection in the dark computer screen looked back at me. Tired eyes, tight smile. I wasn't bitter about being single. I had a solid job in marketing, friends who felt like family, Saturday hikes through Discovery Park. But in Chloe's world, all of that meant nothing without a ring. I zipped my suitcase shut, slid a small wrapped box into the side pocket, the wedding gift. A walnut picture frame I'd had engraved with the words, "May this home hold only what is honest." Lifting the handle, I whispered to myself, time to face it. Outside, the rain slowed. My Uber reminder pinged, leave by 9. I pulled on my trench coat, took one last look at my apartment, and stepped out the door toward a weekend I already knew wouldn't be kind. The Uber ride to SeaTac was quiet, except for the low hum of the wipers clearing drizzle from the windshield. I sat in the back seat, clutching my carry-on, rehearsing polite smiles I knew I'd need later. My chest tightened every time I pictured Chloe's smirk. By the time I reached the gate, the morning rush was in full swing, business travelers tapping at laptops, families juggling strollers. I found a window seat on my Alaska Airlines flight, slipped the gift frame into the overhead, and sat down. A woman in her 40s slid into the aisle seat beside me. Headed home or away? She asked, buckling her belt. Wedding, I said, forcing a small smile. Yours? I laughed softly, shaking my head. No, my sister's. She nodded like she understood more than I'd said, then went back to her magazine. The plane lifted off over Puget Sound, city shrinking under a curtain of clouds. I leaned my forehead against the cool glass, trying to breathe. 2 hours, that's all it took to go from the gray comfort of Seattle to the glittering stage Chloe had built in San Francisco. I pulled out my phone, scrolling past old photos. Me and Chloe as kids in Portland, both grinning in matching pajamas. Me at college graduation, Chloe in the front row pretending boredom. The distance between then and now felt wider than the 1,000 miles we were flying. The captain's voice cut through. We'll be landing at SFO in about 20 minutes. Weather is clear, 64 degrees. Clear skies. Chloe would love that. I tightened my seatbelt and whispered to myself, just get through today. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't be that simple. The drive from SFO into the city was a blur of palm trees, freeways, and the Bay Bridge glinting in the sun. By the time my lift wound up Nob Hill and stopped in front of the Fairmont Hotel, my stomach was already tied in knots. The place looked like a palace, its white stone facade glowing in the afternoon light. I stepped through the revolving doors into a lobby buzzing with wedding guests. Crystal chandeliers hung above polished marble floors. Waiters carried trays of champagne like the night was already in motion. Everyone seemed to know exactly where they belonged except me. A young woman in a pale pink dress intercepted me with a clipboard. Her smile was trained, professional. Grace Miller? The bride's sister? I nodded. Follow me. She led me through the grand ballroom, past towering flower arrangements and tables draped in gold linen. Guests mingled easily, couples leaning into each other as if they were part of Chloe's curated dream. I tried to steady my breathing, reminding myself this was just another social function, no different from client events back in Seattle. But the difference was here. My mistakes and insecurities weren't hidden. They were ammunition for Chloe. We stopped at a table tucked near the side doors where waiters were already weaving in and out with trays. Table 14, the woman chirped, gesturing to a name card with Grace Miller printed neatly in black. I froze. The singles table. Around me sat a mix of Chloe's coworkers I barely recognized and an elderly aunt who squinted at me like she was searching for the right memory. One of the young women at the table whispered something to another, then looked me up and down before laughing. Heat rose in my cheeks. Of course, Chloe wouldn't waste the chance to put me here. I slid into my seat, plastering on a polite smile while my chest tightened. The music from the string quartet swelled in the background, elegant and suffocating all at once. "Grace!" My father's voice cut through, warm but nervous. He leaned down to kiss my cheek. "Glad you made it. Traffic wasn't bad?" "Fine," I said quickly. His eyes flickered toward my table assignment, and for a moment I saw the same flicker of discomfort I felt. But then he straightened, as if afraid Chloe might notice. When he left, I picked up my champagne flute, holding it like a shield. From across the ballroom, Chloe floated in, radiant in her lace gown, Ryan at her side. She looked like a queen surveying her court. Her gaze swept the room, then landed on me. A knowing smirk curled at the edge of her mouth, as if to say, "Exactly where you belong." I pressed the glass to my lips, swallowing hard. The celebration had barely begun, and already I felt like the target of a game I hadn't agreed to play. Still, a thought whispered beneath the sting. If she wants me humiliated, she's going to have to work harder than this. The string quartet shifted from Vivaldi to Sinatra, and the ballroom grew louder with laughter and clinking glasses. I sat at table 14, nursing a second flute of champagne, when I saw Chloe making her way toward me. Her train flowed behind her like a cape, Ryan dutifully at her side, his smile polished for the cameras. "There you are, Grace," she said, her voice high and sugar-sweet, like I'd been hiding instead of sitting exactly where she'd put me. "Come on, I want you to meet some very important people." I didn't have a chance to argue before her manicured fingers curled around my wrist. She pulled me away from my seat, across the dance floor, into a circle of older, well-dressed strangers who radiated wealth and judgment. "Everyone," Chloe announced brightly, placing herself at Ryan's side. "This is my sister Grace. She's our career woman, always so busy with her marketing job up in Seattle that she hasn't found the right someone yet." Heat surged into my face. My smile froze, brittle as glass. "Oh dear," an elegant woman with pearls and perfect posture cooed. "Still single at your age? Don't worry, there's someone for everyone. My nephew met his wife in a church group. You should try one." A tall man chuckled, swirling his scotch. "Or maybe lower your standards a little. My aunt didn't meet anyone until 50 ended up with a widower who already had 6 kids. She's thrilled now." The group laughed politely. Chloe leaned into Ryan's arm, eyes glittering. "Grace is very independent," she added, making the words sound like a diagnosis. I swallowed hard. "I just haven't met the right person," I said quietly, though my voice wavered. Ryan's mother, Margaret, gave me a look of pity that cut like a knife. "Well, don't wait too long, dear. Fertility doesn't last forever." My stomach clenched. It was as if the conversation had been choreographed, each comment designed to strip me down. I caught my father's eyes from across the room he was watching, uncomfortable, but he didn't step in. The photographer appeared suddenly, camera raised. "Family photo," he called. "Do you have a +1, Grace?" I blinked. No. He frowned, almost annoyed, before directing Chloe and Ryan into the center of the shot. I hovered at the edge, smiling stiffly as the flash burned white. Chloe leaned close while the photographer adjusted his lens. "Try not to look too miserable, sis," she whispered through her perfect smile. "It'll show up in the pictures." The words stabbed deeper than she knew. The photo ended, and the group dispersed. I stood there, skin hot, ears ringing, wondering how many more rounds of this I'd have to endure. My hands shook as I lifted the champagne flute, but I forced myself to drink, to look unbothered. "Grace, you okay?" It was Mom, suddenly at my side, touching my elbow. "I'm fine," I lied. My voice was tight, my throat raw. She hesitated, guilt flickering across her face, before she gave me a quick squeeze and slipped away again, as though staying might anger Chloe. I watched her go, heart pounding, alone again, in a room filled with people. Chloe's laughter rang out from across the hall, bright and sharp, and I realized she was thriving off this turning my existence into a punchline. I set the empty glass down with a thud, forcing myself to breathe. This was only the beginning. And I knew Chloe wasn't done yet. The music shifted again, this time into something playful, and the DJ's voice boomed over the speakers. "All right, ladies, it's that time. All the single women to the dance floor for the bouquet toss." Laughter and cheers erupted. I sank lower in my chair, praying no one noticed me. But of course, Chloe had thought ahead. "There she is!" One of her bridesmaids, a tall brunette in sequins, swooped in and caught my arm. "Come on, Grace. Tradition!" "I'm fine here," I muttered, trying to pull back, but her grip tightened. In seconds, I was being dragged across the polished floor into the center of the ballroom, where 20 girls in pastel dresses were already bouncing on their heels, squealing like it was the highlight of the night. I stood among them, rigid, hands clasped in front of me. Most of them looked barely 22, cousins from Ryan's side still glowing from college graduation. My navy dress suddenly felt funereal, heavy against their pastel cheer. From the stage, Chloe caught my eye. Her lips curved into a smirk only I could read. She lifted her bouquet high, the crowd cheering, phones ready to capture the moment. "Ready?" the DJ shouted. I closed my eyes, wishing I could vanish. 3, 2, 1! Chloe turned, not randomly, not carelessly, but with calculated precision. Her arm arced, and the bouquet flew clear across the circle, landing directly into the hands of a giggling cousin named Madison, no older than 23. The crowd erupted with applause. Chloe clapped dramatically, rushing forward to hug the girl. "Looks like my sister will have to wait a little longer," she announced, her voice carrying through the mic she had somehow acquired. The room roared with laughter. Some looked at me with pity, others with relief that they weren't the target. The sound of it sliced through me like broken glass. I felt the sting of tears press against my eyes. Not here, not in front of them. I forced my face into neutrality, but my throat burned. I heard someone whisper, "Poor Grace," and the words made my chest cave in. Slowly, I backed out of the circle, heels clicking on marble, heat rushing up my neck. I reached my table again, grabbing my clutch like a lifeline. My hands shook as I fumbled for my phone. I could just leave, slip out, call an Uber, disappear before Chloe gets another chance. "Leaving already?" Aunt Carol, seated beside me, asked, her voice too loud. I forced a brittle smile. "Just checking something." But inside, I was unraveling. This wasn't just Chloe's wedding anymore. It was her stage, and I was the punchline. For the first time that night, I let the thought settle. She doesn't just want me embarrassed. She wants me erased. I stood up, clutch tight in hand, ready to slip toward the exit. My heart thudded so hard I barely noticed the tall man in a charcoal suit watching me from across the room. I had one hand on my clutch, the other gripping the back of my chair for balance. My body screamed at me to leave before Chloe found a new way to cut me open. That's when a deep voice, steady and calm, brushed against my ear. "Grace Miller?" I turned sharply. A man in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit stood there, taller than most around him, his dark hair neatly swept back. He wasn't smiling, not yet, but his eyes carried something sharper than kindness, something like recognition. "Yes?" My voice cracked. He extended a hand as if this were a business meeting, not my slow public execution. "Ethan Walker. I don't think we've met officially, though. Your sister and I go back a long way." I blinked, confused. Chloe had never mentioned him, and yet the way he said it, I knew she'd prefer I didn't know. Sorry, have we—" He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "She broke up with me in college. Said I didn't have enough ambition. She was probably right back then. Not anymore." The words hit me like a chord struck too hard. He wasn't here to comfort me out of pity. He was here on his own mission. "And why?" I asked cautiously. "Are you telling me this now?" Ethan's lips curved, just slightly. "Because I just watched your sister humiliate you in front of 200 people, and I thought, maybe tonight we both get something back." My pulse stumbled. "Something back?" "Dignity," he said simply, "and maybe a little justice." I searched his face. His confidence was unnerving, but there was no mockery in his tone. For the first time all evening, I didn't feel like prey. Chloe's laughter rang from across the ballroom, sharp as broken glass. I followed Ethan's gaze. He was watching her, not with longing, but with the quiet steadiness of someone who'd already outgrown her. "You don't mind?" he asked, sliding into the chair beside mine. "If I sit here?" "I guess not," I whispered, though it came out steadier than I felt. "Good," he said, draping one arm casually over the back of my chair. "Let her wonder. People like Chloe hate not knowing everything." It should have felt absurd, a stranger stepping into my disaster like this. But when I caught Chloe's head snap toward us, her perfect smile faltering for a split second, I realized something. Maybe I wasn't leaving after all. Ethan's arm rested lightly on the back of my chair, casual but intentional. Across the room, Chloe had paused mid-conversation with her bridesmaids, eyes narrowing as she clocked our closeness. For once, her perfect smile slipped. I felt a surge of something unexpected power. "You know," Ethan murmured, leaning just enough for only me to hear. "She's already wondering how we know each other. That's good. Let her sweat." I let out a shaky laugh. I don't usually star in mind games. "You don't have to," he said smoothly. "I'll take the lead, but if you want this to work, you'll need to play along." I studied him, searching for the catch. "Why? Why help me? You don't even know me." His jaw flexed slightly, a flicker of old bitterness in his eyes. "Because I do know Chloe. I know exactly how much she loves control, and how much she hates not being the smartest person in the room. Tonight, I want her to feel what it's like to lose." The words hit me deeper than I expected. For years, I had swallowed Chloe's little cuts, the sly digs disguised as jokes. To hear someone else articulate her cruelty, it almost made me dizzy. I took a slow sip of champagne, then leaned closer. "If we're doing this, let's do it right. She hates when people bring up college. She pretends those years didn't exist." His smile grew sharper. "Perfect." "And if you want to really get under her skin," I added, surprising myself with the edge in my voice, "mention how stubborn I am about keeping work-life boundaries. She mocks me for it. If you sound impressed, she'll lose her mind." Ethan's laugh was low, genuine. "You're good at this." "Desperate times," I muttered, though my pulse was steadying now. For the first time all evening, I wasn't just enduring, I was strategizing. From across the ballroom, Chloe started toward us, her gown trailing like a storm cloud. I caught my reflection in a mirrored column. Navy dress, hair pinned neatly, posture straight. I didn't look like prey anymore. Ethan glanced at me, eyes glinting. "Ready?" I nodded. "Let's give her a show." When Chloe reached us, her voice pitched an octave higher. "Ethan, I didn't realize you and Grace knew each other." He didn't miss a beat. "Old friends," he said smoothly, his hand brushing mine on the table. "We've been catching up. Funny how life circles back, isn't it?" Her eyes flicked between us, calculation whirring. Really? Grace never mentioned you. I tilted my head, letting a small smile tug at my lips. I keep my private life private. You know how I am about balance. The line landed perfectly. Chloe's lashes fluttered, her composure cracking for just a second. Ethan leaned in, as if he'd won a point in a game only we understood, and for the first time that night I felt it too. Not survival, not shame, leverage. The band shifted into a slower melody, the kind meant for couples who belonged together. Glasses clinked, laughter softened, and the dance floor filled with pairs sliding easily into rhythm. Ethan's hand brushed against mine on the table, deliberate but gentle. "Dance with me," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Every instinct in me wanted to refuse. Dancing meant exposure. Dancing meant eyes, cameras, whispers. But across the room, I caught sight of Chloe, her head bent toward one of Ryan's cousins, lips curved in a knowing smirk. She thought she'd won already, that I'd leave humiliated. So I stood. "All right." Ethan's smile was subtle but sure, the smile of a man used to winning battles most people didn't even know were happening. He led me onto the floor, his hand warm against my waist. I placed mine on his shoulder, the move so natural it startled me. The music swelled. We moved in sync, not perfect but convincing. His presence steadied me, and I realized for the first time all night, I wasn't shrinking, I was holding space. "I can feel her eyes burning holes into us," Ethan murmured, low enough only I could hear. I tilted my head slightly, daring a glance. Chloe stood near the edge of the floor, her jaw tight, bouquet clasped like a weapon. Her friends whispered around her, all stealing glances at us. "She looks like she's choking on her own smile," I whispered back. "Good," Ethan said, his hand tightening just slightly at my waist. "She deserves to squirm." The tension in my chest loosened into something close to laughter. For years, I'd been the butt of Chloe's jokes, the spinster sister, the cautionary tale. And now, here I was, in the center of her fairy tale ballroom, dancing like I belonged there more than she did. "You're better at this than I expected," Ethan said. "At what? Pretending?" "At taking back control." His eyes locked on mine, serious now. "She's not used to seeing you stand tall, is she?" "No," I admitted. "She's used to me staying quiet." "Not tonight." The song wound on, and with every step, I felt years of resentment peeling back. The whispers from the tables no longer cut, they fueled me. I could hear snippets. "Who's he? They look good together. Grace, really?" And each one made Chloe's face tighten further. Halfway through the song, she couldn't take it anymore. Chloe glided forward with Ryan in tow, her smile stretched too wide. "Mind if I cut in?" she asked, her voice dripping honey but eyes flashing steel. Ethan didn't hesitate. "Actually, yes," he said politely but firmly. "We're having a moment." The air shifted. Guests within earshot stilled, sensing the friction. Ryan glanced around nervously, tugging at his cufflinks. Chloe laughed, brittle. "Of course. I just wanted to say how happy I am that Grace finally found someone. We were all so worried about her." Ethan's grip on my waist steadied me before I could flinch. He turned to Chloe, his tone cool. "Funny, from what I've observed tonight, it doesn't look like worry, it looks like entertainment, at Grace's expense." A hush fell over the circle around us. Chloe blinked, her mask cracking for a split second. Ryan shifted uncomfortably, muttering, "Chloe." But she ignored him. I lifted my chin, letting the silence hang, letting her stew in it. For once, I didn't rush to smooth things over. The song ended, applause rising politely from the crowd. Ethan bowed his head toward me with a flourish, as if I were royalty. And in that moment, standing hand in hand in the center of Chloe's perfect wedding, I realized something shocking. For the first time in my life, Chloe wasn't in control. The applause for the slow song had barely faded when Chloe's laughter cut through the room, too sharp, too loud. She still stood at the edge of the dance floor, bouquet clutched like a weapon. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes glittering with something closer to fury than joy. "Well," she said brightly, raising her voice so nearby tables turned, This is adorable. Really. My sister, finally pretending she has someone to dance with. A few people chuckled, unsure whether to join in or stay quiet. Ryan shifted beside her, tugging at his tie. Chloe, maybe... But she pressed on. Everyone, in case you haven't heard, Grace here is 32 and still waiting for Prince Charming. So desperate she'll rope in anyone to play the part. The ballroom stilled. A wave of whispers rolled across the floor. My throat tightened. This was it, the blow she'd been saving. I opened my mouth, but Ethan was faster. Anyone? He said, his voice calm but carrying. That's a curious way to describe me, Chloe. Chloe blinked, caught off guard. Excuse me? He stepped forward, still holding my hand. His posture radiated authority, his tone measured but cutting. Funny you don't seem to remember me, but then again, you never liked remembering the years before Ryan. Color drained from her face. What are you talking about? The crowd leaned in. Ryan frowned, confused. Chloe, do you know him? Ethan let the silence hang for a beat before speaking again, clear and deliberate. I was the boyfriend you left behind in Boston. Back when money meant more to you than people, you told me I wasn't ambitious enough, that I'd never be more than a footnote in your story. Gasps rippled through the room. Chloe's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time all night, she had no rehearsed line. Ryan's voice dropped. Is this true? She shook her head furiously. He's lying! I barely knew him. Ethan's laugh was short, humorless. Barely knew me? We dated for 3 years. You knew me well enough to dump me the day Ryan got his first investment offer. You told me point blank, you'd rather marry money than waste more time on a dreamer. The ballroom erupted in murmurs. Guests craned their necks, phones half raised, some already recording. Chloe, Ryan's mother said sharply from her table. Is this true? Chloe's face twisted, desperation seeping through the cracks of her perfect bride mask. It was years ago, we were kids. It doesn't matter. Ryan stared at her like he was seeing a stranger. It matters if you built this whole fairy tale on lies. My pulse thundered in my ears. I could barely breathe, but I couldn't look away. For years, Chloe had orchestrated my humiliation. Now the spotlight had turned. Ethan's hand squeezed mine. You spent the evening mocking Grace, parading her around like some sad punchline. But the truth is, she's stronger than you'll ever be, because she never needed to tear someone else down to feel worthy. Gasps again. All eyes swung back to me. My cheeks burned, but for the first time, it wasn't shame. It was clarity. Chloe's voice wavered, shrill now. Don't listen to him! Grace put him up to this. She's jealous. She always has been. I stepped forward, my voice steady even as my chest shook. Jealous of what, Chloe? Of being the girl who needs an audience to feel loved? No, I'd rather be alone than built on lies. The words sliced the air. A silence followed. Heavy, undeniable. Ryan looked at me, then back at his bride. His face was pale. You told me Ethan was just an old classmate, that there was nothing worth mentioning. Chloe's lips trembled. Ryan, please. But he stepped back, shaking his head. Unbelievable. The ballroom buzzed, guests whispering like bees stirred from a hive. Some stared at Chloe with thinly veiled contempt. Others looked at me with something closer to respect. Ethan turned, offering his arm like a gentleman in a black-tie drama. Shall we, Grace? I hesitated for only a second, then slid my hand into his. The gesture felt surreal, defiant, liberating. Together we walked off the dance floor, past the tables where moments ago I'd been invisible. Heads turned, whispers followed, but none of it cut anymore. Behind me I heard Chloe's voice crack, high and frantic. This is my wedding! You can't just... But she could no longer command the room. The power she'd clung to slipped through her fingers, and everyone saw it. We reached the ballroom doors. Ethan leaned close, his voice low, meant just for me. That, he said, was the first checkmate. My chest rose with a shaky breath, half relief, half disbelief. For the first time in years, Chloe wasn't towering over me, and I wasn't the punchline anymore. The doors to the ballroom swung shut behind Ethan and me, muting the buzz of voices. But even from the hallway, I could hear it. The rising hum of gossip, the sound of a room turning on its queen. Inside, Chloe stood frozen near the head table, bouquet limp in her hand. For the first time, the spotlight that had been her crown all night burned like a curse. Ryan's voice cut through, sharp with disbelief. "You told me Ethan was just an acquaintance, someone you barely remembered." Dozens of guests shifted in their seats, eyes darting between the groom and the bride. No one reached for champagne now. Every glass was suspended mid-air, waiting. Chloe forced a laugh, brittle as glass. "Ryan, please, it was years ago, college nonsense. Why would it matter?" "Because you lied," Ryan snapped. His polished composure cracked, the perfect investment banker suddenly looking like a man who'd just realized the deal of his life might be rotten. "You lied to me about who he was and why you left him." Whispers rippled across the room. A cousin leaned toward her date, muttering, "So she did trade up." Another guest hissed, "Classic Chloe." The judgment was no longer whispered pity for me. It was open disdain for her. Chloe's mother-in-law, Margaret, stood, her pearls trembling against her collarbone. "Chloe, when Ethan spoke, you didn't deny dating him, you just tried to minimize it. That's not how a truthful woman answers." "Margaret, please." Chloe's voice wavered, but Ryan cut in again. "Is that why you pushed me to rush the engagement? To erase whatever would come crawling out of your past before it caught up to you?" The room went deathly still. Chloe's face flushed crimson. She looked around, searching for allies among her bridesmaids, her friends, her family, but most avoided her gaze. Some whispered to each other with hands half covering their mouths, their expressions a mix of shock and schadenfreude. One of Ryan's uncles let out a low whistle. "Never seen a bride implode on her own wedding day." Laughter followed, quiet at first, then louder, until Chloe's eyes filled with tears. She slammed the bouquet onto the table, petals scattering. "Stop it! All of you! This is my wedding." Ryan didn't flinch. "No. This is our marriage. Or at least it was supposed to be." The statement landed like a gavel. Chloe reached for his arm, desperation twisting her features. "Ryan, don't do this. It was nothing. Ethan meant nothing. You mean everything." But Ryan pulled away, shaking his head. "I can't trust a word you say right now." The guests leaned back, satisfied spectators at the collapse of a show they hadn't expected but couldn't look away from. Cameras discreetly lifted, a few flashes went off. Chloe, who had spent the entire day curating her perfect image, was being documented in real time as it unraveled. At the far edge of the ballroom, I caught sight of my mother rising from her chair, her face pale with shame, while my father pressed a hand to his temple. They didn't intervene. They couldn't. Chloe had dug this grave herself. Ryan exhaled sharply, then looked around the room. "I think everyone should enjoy the rest of the evening without us. Chloe and I need to talk." The weight of his words hung in the air. No one clapped, no one cheered. Instead, the silence was thick with judgment and curiosity. Chloe's shoulders slumped, her flawless gown suddenly looking like armor that no longer fit. For once, she wasn't the bride commanding attention, she was the spectacle no one envied. And though I was no longer in the room, I knew. The empire Chloe had built out of mockery and appearances had begun to crumble. The ballroom doors hadn't even finished swinging shut when I stopped walking. My pulse pounded in my ears, but underneath the adrenaline was something else. Clarity. For years, Chloe had spoken for me, twisting every silence into proof of weakness. Tonight, Ethan had cut her down. Ryan had questioned her, but if I walked away now, I'd still be the woman who let everyone else fight her battles. Not anymore. I turned on my heel. Ethan frowned, but didn't stop me. "Grace, I need to say this," I told him. My voice came out firmer than I expected. "For me." He nodded once, stepping aside. When I re-entered the ballroom, every head swung toward me. Conversations hushed. Chloe stood near the cake table, her gown rumpled, her bouquet abandoned. Ryan lingered a step behind her, arms crossed. I took a steadying breath and raised my voice. Since we're all talking about me tonight, maybe I should finally join the conversation. A ripple went through the room. Some guests leaned forward, eager for more drama. Others looked relieved, like they'd been waiting for me to defend myself. Chloe forced a brittle smile. "Grace, this isn't necessary." "Yes, it is," I cut in. "You've spent years making me your punchline. My job, my age, my relationship status, none of it has ever been enough for you. You parade me around like a cautionary tale, as if being single at 32 is a tragedy." Murmurs rose. A few women in the crowd nodded quietly. I took another step forward. My hands were shaking, but my words sharpened. "But here's what you never understood, Chloe. I don't need a man to validate me. I don't need pity from strangers or cruel jokes dressed up as sisterly concern. I have a life, a good one. And if that doesn't fit into your picture-perfect narrative, that's your problem, not mine." Chloe's face flushed crimson. "You're twisting this. I just wanted the best for you." "No," I said evenly, locking eyes with her. "You wanted to feel superior. Every time you mocked me, every time you introduced me as the sad older sister, it wasn't love. It was you propping yourself up. And the sad thing is, it worked for a while. I believed you. I thought maybe I was less." I drew a shaky breath. My throat burned, but I pushed through. "But tonight? Tonight you showed everyone who you really are. Not the perfect bride. Not the golden daughter. Just a woman terrified of being ordinary, willing to humiliate her own sister to feel special." The room fell silent, the weight of my words echoing. Ryan's jaw tightened. He looked at Chloe as if he were seeing her clearly for the first time. Chloe's voice broke, shrill and desperate. "You're jealous!" "You've always been jealous of me. My looks, my relationships." "Jealous?" I almost laughed. "Of what? A marriage built on secrets? A wedding where everyone's respect crumbles the moment they see the real you?" Her eyes darted around the room, searching for an ally, but none came. Even her bridesmaids looked away. I exhaled slowly, letting the silence stretch. Then I added, softer but sharper than anything else. "You tried to erase me tonight, but instead you erased yourself." Gasps flickered through the audience. Chloe's lips trembled, words failing her. Ryan stepped back, shaking his head. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small under her shadow. I felt tall, steady, unshakable. I turned toward the crowd, my voice calm now. "I may not have a ring on my finger, but I have self-respect, and that's something no one here can take away." The applause started hesitantly, then grew scattered claps, swelling into a wave that filled the ballroom. Not the polite applause Chloe had orchestrated for herself earlier, but genuine, solid approval. Chloe stood frozen in the middle of it, her gown glittering under the chandeliers, her face pale with rage and humiliation. I didn't wait for her reply. I stepped back, head high, and this time, when Ethan offered his arm, I took it. Not because I needed rescuing, but because I had chosen to walk beside him on my own terms. The applause echoed through the ballroom like thunder, rolling over Chloe's fragile defenses. I could see her chest rise and fall too quickly, the glittering bodice of her gown straining as though it might split under the pressure. She stood alone now, her bridesmaids silent, her guests divided, her husband looking at her like she was a stranger. "Stop clapping!" she shrieked suddenly, her voice slicing through the room. The laughter and cheers died at once, replaced by stunned silence. Chloe's hands trembled as she pointed at me. "She's lying. She's always lied about me, trying to make me look bad. She can't stand that I'm the one who made something of myself." Ryan stepped forward, his jaw tight. "Made something of yourself? Chloe, what exactly did you make? A perfect facade? A marriage built on omissions?" "Ryan, please." Chloe grabbed his arm with frantic fingers, but he shook her off. Her bouquet, abandoned on the table earlier, had shed petals across the floor, each one crushed under heels as if the night itself was mocking her. Her mother-in-law's voice cut sharply across the chaos. "This family values honesty above everything, and what we've witnessed tonight doesn't look like honesty." Chloe's face crumpled. "You don't understand," she cried. "I did everything for us, for this wedding, for this family. I had to be perfect, or else none of you would love me." Her mascara streaked as tears spilled, black rivulets carving down her cheeks. The crowd shifted uneasily. What had started as arrogance was unraveling into desperation. I should have felt pity. But watching her crumble under the weight of her own deceit, I realized this was the mask falling away. She wasn't invincible, she wasn't untouchable, she was terrified of being ordinary. One of her bridesmaids whispered, too loud to be missed, "This is a disaster." Chloe spun on her. "Don't you dare! You were supposed to back me up!" But the girl looked down, embarrassed, and took a step back. The rest followed, retreating as if Chloe's downfall was contagious. Finally, Chloe turned back to me, her expression wild, eyes rimmed red. "Are you happy now, Grace? You've ruined my wedding." I held her gaze steady. "No, Chloe. You did that yourself." The words landed like a final blow. Chloe staggered, her hands clutching at the edge of the cake table. For a heartbeat, I thought she might faint. Instead, she buried her face in her hands and sobbed, her body shaking violently. Ryan looked at her with something colder than anger-disappointment. Then, without a word, he walked out of the ballroom. A ripple of gasps followed his departure, the slam of the door sealing the end of her illusion. Chloe stayed hunched by the table, sobbing into silence, while the guests began to disperse in uneasy clusters. No one rushed to comfort her. No one offered tissues. She was the center of the room, but for the first time in her life, utterly alone. And as I watched, a truth settled in my chest. Chloe hadn't just lost her composure. She'd lost her power. The sound of Chloe's sobs still echoed faintly behind us as Ethan pushed open the heavy doors of the Fairmont ballroom. The cool night air rushed in, sharp with the scent of eucalyptus from the trees lining Nob Hill. I hadn't realized how suffocating it had been inside until I could finally breathe. For a long moment, I just stood there on the marble steps, my hands trembling at my sides. The city glittered below San Francisco, alive with lights and noise, completely indifferent to the storm that had just torn through one family's perfect facade. Ethan slid his jacket off and draped it gently around my shoulders. "You were incredible in there," he said softly. I let out a shaky laugh. I thought my voice was going to crack halfway through. "It didn't," he said firmly. "You were steady. You were stronger than she's ever been." His words hit me harder than Chloe's insults ever had. Not because I needed validation, but because, for once, someone wasn't speaking over me. He was speaking to me. We started down the steps together, the distant hum of traffic filling the silence. My heels clicked against the stone, echoing like punctuation to every step away from Chloe's shadow. Halfway down, I stopped and looked back at the glowing windows of the ballroom. Inside, guests were still murmuring, dissecting the wreckage of the evening, probably already reshaping the story for years to come. But for once, I wasn't part of the joke. I was the turning point. Ethan followed my gaze. "She'll try to spin it. People like Chloe always do. But tonight they saw the truth. You don't need to fight anymore." I nodded slowly, my chest loosening. "I don't think I've ever felt this free." He smiled, tilting his head toward the street. "Then let's not waste it. Want to get out of here?" I drew in the crisp night air, straightened my shoulders, and stepped forward. "Yes, let's go." And just like that, I left Chloe's empire of glass behind me, ready to walk into something real. The Fairmont was only a few blocks behind us, but it felt like another lifetime. Ethan led me down California Street until the grand marble facades gave way to cozier storefronts glowing against the night. We slipped into a small bar tucked between a bookstore and a cafe, the kind of place you'd miss if you weren't looking for it. Inside, the lighting was low and warm. A jazz trio played softly in the corner, their saxophone mellow against the clink of glasses. The bartender glanced up, nodded once, and poured water without asking. Maybe he could tell we didn't come for champagne celebrations. Ethan guided me to a booth near the back. I slid into the leather seat, finally exhaling like I hadn't since the morning. My reflection in the darkened window caught me off guard, mascara smudged, hair slipping from its pins, but eyes steady. For once, I didn't look small. "What's your poison?" Ethan asked, settling across from me. "Whiskey sour," I said without hesitation. "Stronger the better." His lips curved. "I like a woman who knows her drink." He waved the bartender over. 2 whiskey sours, heavy pour. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was heavy with everything unsaid. I fiddled with the napkin, trying to gather the courage. Finally, I blurted, "Why did you do it? Tonight, I mean. You could have just stayed in your corner, enjoyed the free food, and watched Chloe implode." Ethan leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "Because I remember what it felt like, being dismissed by her. She treated me like I was invisible, like ambition meant nothing without money already in your pocket, and when I saw her doing the same to you, it hit too close." I swallowed hard. So it wasn't about me. It was about revenge. His eyes locked on mine, steady and serious. "At first. But then I realized you weren't like her. You weren't fighting for attention. You were just trying to survive her cruelty, and that's when I knew I couldn't stay silent." The drinks arrived. I took a long sip, the burn of whiskey grounding me. For a while, we just sat, listening to the saxophone bleed into the night. Finally, I whispered, "You know, for years I thought maybe Chloe was right. Maybe I was pathetic. Tonight was the first time I didn't feel like the family's disappointment." Ethan leaned forward, elbows on the table. His voice softened. "Grace, Chloe's power only existed because you believed her. But the woman I saw tonight standing tall in the middle of that ballroom, refusing to back down, that woman isn't anyone's disappointment." Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them back. I didn't know I had it in me. He smiled faintly. "You did. You just finally let it out." We both laughed, quiet but genuine, as the weight of the night settled into something bearable. After a pause, Ethan pulled a card from his wallet and slid it across the table. His name embossed in clean silver letters. Ethan Cole, CEO, Redwood Tech Ventures. Below, his personal number scribbled in ink. "This isn't about Chloe," he said carefully, "or proving anything. If you want to call me tomorrow or next week or never, it's your choice. Tonight was about you taking back your voice. That's enough." I stared at the card, the edges sharp beneath my fingertips. Why does this feel like a turning point? Because it is. The jazz trio slid into a slower number, a bluesy tune that wrapped around the room like velvet. For a heartbeat, I thought he might ask me to dance again, but instead, he leaned back, letting me have space to breathe. I tucked the card into my purse, my decision not made yet, but the possibility hanging like a spark in the air. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about Chloe or how she saw me. I was thinking about myself and the life I wanted beyond her shadow. When we finally stepped out of the bar, the San Francisco night air felt lighter. Not because the city had changed, but because I had. The streets of San Francisco were quiet when Ethan and I stepped out of the bar. A fog had rolled in, softening the city lights, wrapping everything in a hushed glow. We walked without speaking, the night cool against our skin, the echo of jazz still lingering in my chest. At the corner, we paused beneath a street lamp. The silence between us was different now, not tense, not heavy, just waiting. Ethan shifted, his hands in his pockets. "So," he said lightly, "is this where we say goodnight?" I smiled faintly. "Maybe. Or maybe it's just the start of something." He studied me, his expression unreadable but warm. "Then I'll let you decide." He didn't push, didn't press for an answer. He simply stepped back, giving me space in a way Chloe never had. That, more than anything, felt like freedom. A cab pulled up to the curb. I opened the door, then hesitated, turning back to him. "Ethan, thank you. For tonight. For everything." His smile curved, soft but sure. "Don't thank me, Grace. You did the hard part." The cab driver cleared his throat impatiently. I slipped inside, the city's fog blurring the view of Ethan as the car pulled away. He stood under the street lamp, a tall shadow against the mist, waiting for whatever came next. And for once, I wasn't afraid of the unknown. As the cab wound through the streets, I leaned my head against the window and let the night blur by. For 32 years, I thought silence was survival, that if I kept my head down, Chloe's words couldn't hurt me. But tonight, I realized silence isn't strength. It's surrender. I learned that my worth doesn't shrink just because someone else needs me small. That family isn't defined by blood or comparison, but by respect. And that dignity, once you reclaim it, feels better than applause, better than revenge. Ethan gave me the chance to stand up, but I chose to use my own voice. That choice was mine, and it changed everything. Maybe we'll see each other again, maybe we won't. But it doesn't matter, because I'm walking forward now, not as the shadow of someone else's story, but as the author of my own. So if you've ever been made to feel like you're less, remember this: your voice matters. Don't wait for permission to use it. If this story touched you, hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs the reminder. And tell me in the comments, when did you finally find your voice?